You know the vibes. Welcome back to another episode of the Hoop Genius podcast brought to you by NBA 2K25. And today, unlike a couple gentlemen in Denver, Scott and I both have jobs for today. It's another episode of the show. Mo Mooncey, Scott Perry bringing you another Hoop Genius podcast. And Scott, we got to start right there in Denver, where crazy news, Usher has been in the headlines a lot. The R&B singer, he's been in the headlines a lot. He's doing some shows here in London, and
Okay.
he's famous for having a meme where he just says, "Watch this." And I was reminded of that yesterday because everyone thought the Memphis Grizzlies were crazy for firing their head coach with just 9 games to go in the regular season.
Hmm.
And then yesterday, the owner of the Denver Nuggets said, "Watch this," and fired both the GM and the coach with less than a week to go in the regular season. Scott, what was your kind of initial reaction when this came out?
Wow. What happened here?
Hmm.
That this happens not even a week before the playoff starts. And so obviously it suggests that there were some deep issues there. And, I won't delve into them because I'm not there. I don't know them. But for that to happen right now, I know they were on a 4-game slide. But look, you're looking at Mike Malone, who was a championship coach, and as well as Calvin Booth, who was the championship general manager during that time when they won. So very unfortunate, very surprising, especially again the timing. We talked about that at Memphis. When you're talking about timing, going down here to the very end of the season like this. And this team, and again, we're talking about another team that was just a champion 2 years ago, and another team that, even though they've shown a number of holes this season, you weren't going to count them out because of the presence of Nikola Jokic. So turbulent times in Denver, and so let's see what they do heading into the playoffs. Does the players rally around the interim coach, Coach Adelman, guy who I worked with for a short time in Orlando? Good man. Obviously, his father was a longtime coach. So let's see what happens there. And there'll be a lot of work to do both on and off the court with the Denver Nuggets franchise once this season concludes.
It's turbulent times across the entire league because at this point, it feels like winning is bad for business if you're a head coach in the NBA. 2020, the Lakers win a championship. Frank Vogel fired. 2021, Milwaukee Bucks win a championship. Mike Budenholzer fired. Steve Kerr won it in 2022. He's still there. But 2023, Mike Malone fired. 2024, Joe Mazzulla, he's still there. But the Celtics have high expectations, and new ownership coming in. So, who knows what will happen with that situation. But the sources have been talking, Scott,
Okay.
and we want to get some of your perspectives as a former general manager and being around this league for so long. One
Hmm.
source says that the ownership felt like the team needed a jolt in terms of still making a run and that the vibes have not been good. There was an expectation that things were likely to change with either Malone and or Booth after the season due to what sources described as a cold war between the two. Do you believe, because we see this across all sports, that when there is a coaching change, teams immediately do have a very short-term run of success? Because oftentimes it can be the players just putting in more effort because they want to keep their spot in the
Hmm.
rotation or they want to earn more minutes with a new coach. We do see a couple games after a coach has been fired where teams do play really well. Do you expect to see that from the Nuggets? Was this a panic emergency move to prevent themselves from falling to the play-in?
Yeah, interesting because you're talking about a championship coach here. But yeah, we've seen it time and time again in sports where there has been a coaching change for whatever the reason may be, and that the sense of urgency that happens in the locker room, the players seem to rally around that adversity sometimes and look at it, take it upon themselves that, hey, someone just lost their job. You don't know who was close to the coach who just lost their job, who was not, but that really is inconsequential. Now they know the new guy, in particular, Adelman in this situation, who's been an assistant coach, and this is his shot to show what he can do as a head coach because he's never been one before. So I won't be surprised, let's put it that way, to see a sense of urgency coming from that locker room, coming from that player group. And let's see if it translates to a few wins here to finish out the regular season. But most importantly, does it translate into the playoffs, which is a whole nother animal, as we know? And can they win a couple, three series in the Western Conference? That will be the telltale sign, if you will, if this move had its intended consequences as what you're reporting, that they were needing the sense of urgency and wanted to change the direction of the team right now. So let's see.
A very, very high risk move, right? The Nuggets are
Yes.
just one game ahead of the eighth seed. They're three
Yeah.
and seven in their last 10, and they've lost four straight. This was, it comes across to me like a panic move because why not just wait until the offseason, right? But I have a few questions for you, Scott.
Hmm.
Using your experience as general manager. When it comes to because that report there just mentioned a cold war between the head coach and the GM,
Hmm.
both of whom were fired. When it comes to things like hiring coaching staff, for example, a shooting coach in the NBA across the various teams you've worked for, because you work for a whole bunch of teams,
Hmm.
is it common practice for the general manager to be hiring those guys, or does a coach get to hire his own staff and the people he thinks are necessary to be in that practice facility with him?
This is where Mo, the importance of having symmetry, relationship, and good, healthy conversation between yourself, you know, being the general manager, front office, and your coach has to be on point, and you've got to be rowing in the same direction. Now, for me, yeah, a coach wants to have the assistant coaches around him that's going to be in that bunker with him day in and day out that he has a comfort level with. So you like to be able to give him some latitude in terms of who he wants to bring in. Now, as a general manager in the front office, all you want to do is just have a conversation with him, meet who he's talking about to make sure that coach is going to fit in the entire culture, that he's not just going to be operating in just that singular silo of just being, just loyal to the coach. You want that guy again on board with what the organization is doing. So you walk a fine line dance, but ultimately you trust when you hire if you hire the coach, you're going to trust your coach that he understands where you're coming from, what we're doing, and so the type of people that he's going to want to bring in the organization, are going to be reflective of your values, your character, your culture, and identity that you're trying to establish. So you're always walking that fine lines, but you want to give your coach as much latitude in that area as possible. And obviously, I've been in situations before that, on a couple of occasions, there may be someone they want to bring in that is a red flag, in terms of the fit, and then you got to really have a serious conversation at that time. But for the most part, places I've been, a lot of the coaches have, done a pretty effective job in trying to, bring people in that obviously fit their needs and
Mm.
and how they want to play the game, but also have the character and the representative uh, type qualities that we would want as an organization. That when I say we, meaning the front office.
Because according to Adam Mayer, a reporter for the Nuggets, Calvin Booth hired a shooting coach and wanted to rebuild the Nuggets organizationally. Mike Malone responded saying, "No, that's a coach. I hire coaches,
Hmm.
and you're not going to be in the building." So some players like Zeke Nagy, who had to work with the new shooting coach, had to do their workouts outside of the building. Adam Mayer's also theorized that Malone saw the new shooting coach as a spy for Calvin
Hmm.
Booth, and, it
Hmm.
sounds very political over there. Another report that came out of the New York Times is that Calvin Booth wanted Malone to use the younger players that he had drafted, like Jalen
Hmm.
Pickett, and he was annoyed that Malone went with Russell Westbrook down the stretch of games rather than Jalen Pickett in numerous occasions this season. And it's interesting to me that the final game that Coach Malone coached was that loss, that we spoke about the other day were like the worst 3 minute stretch I've seen them play.
Mhm.
And Malone didn't go with Russell Westbrook until the final 43 seconds of that game. So there's clearly tension that high. How much
Yes.
input do general managers typically have when it comes to the personnel that are out there on the floor getting minutes? And how much can the coaches have that discretion themselves?
This gets to the style of leadership coming from the front office. See, for me, and as a former coach, if I'm going to hire a coach, I've got to entrust upon him and not micromanage his every step. Obviously, my job is to put together the very best roster that I can, that I believe they can go out there and win basketball games for us. But you're hiring a coach to manage that entire roster, put them in situations to excel and exceed. And this is why you have to have constant, healthy communication with your coach throughout the season in terms of, what he sees, what, what guys need to work on. And the longer you work with someone, the more you're going to realize what kind of players, too, best fit his style of coaching, too. You know, so again, this just speaks when I hear all of these different stories, Mo, because like I said, we don't know all of the exact
Facts. Yeah.
happenings there. However, there obviously were some issues there between the two. You've got the community. I can't stress it enough, Mo. Just the importance of being able to have real healthy dialogue, and that you're working on the same page. See what I'm hearing from you. There obviously was there was a certain amount of distrust
Hmm.
or mistrust in the building, and that's never healthy for a basketball team. But again, how long that's been going on, we don't know. This is where when you have a great player like Nikola Jokic, the public may not know these things because he can cover up so much
Hmm.
that may be going on.
And
And
I,
so, and they won a championship 2 years
yeah.
ago. So winning keeps a lot of these things in the background until you're not winning as much.
Hmm.
And now things start to rise to the surface. So, you hate to see it, how it all transpired like this. But again, to our listeners out there, I can't tell you how important the relationship between coach and general manager is to the success of your organization, because it cannot be so territorial on either side that it gets in the way of the ultimate thing, and that is winning and running a very functional, healthy organization. So that's how I look at the whole thing. And obviously, that broke down in Denver. Ownership watched it from what I can tell and decided that they need to step in and make a move like immediately.
And it's interesting the dynamic between the coach and general manager and the layers to it, right? Because it's reported that Mike Malone really wanted them to keep Bruce Brown, really wanted them to keep
Hmm.
KCP. Cameron
Hmm.
Booth obviously let those guys walk, and a lot of the moves he made were for money-saving reasons. But
Hmm.
then, is that a directive from the general manager, or is that directive coming down from ownership telling the general manager, we don't want to pay the luxury tax, you need to
Hmm.
cut some costs from our roster, otherwise you're going to be fired anyway. So
Right.
there's a lot of layers that go into this, right?
Absolutely. No
But
question.
there's one thing I wanted to address here, and there's a nasty narrative going around social media, and one thing I really don't like is a lot of basketball fans have a lot of disrespect for Russell Westbrook, and coincidentally, it's just a correlation thing that four of the five last head coaches that Russ has played for have either quit or been fired after a year, the year after coaching him, right? And
Hmm.
a lot of people are running around saying, "Oh, Russell Westbrook is the reason he's fired," so on and so forth. That is absolutely not the case.
No
They
question.
signed Russell Westbrook to a minimum contract, and
Hmm.
he has outperformed every expectation people had for him in Denver. I don't know if there's a player on the minimum playing better than Russell Westbrook this season. When he starts for the Nuggets, this is a player on a minimum contract that's starting for this team, and the difference is night and day. When Russell Westbrook starts, they are a fantastic team. I don't know
Hmm.
why he's gone back to coming off the bench. I don't know if that's come from the coaching staff, whether it's come from the front office. Who knows what happens? But I just want to put that narrative to bed that
Yeah.
Russell Westbrook gets coaches fired. That's completely false. And if you think that, then I suggest watching the games and not just running with narratives that you
Yeah,
see online.
yeah. And I want to add to that. When you have a guy that lays it on the line every single time he hits the floor, practice, games, playoff games, I mean, he lays it all on the line. That's what you want as a coach, as an organization. Okay, is he a perfect player? There's no such thing as a perfect player, but you start there with the energy, the effort, and the care. See, what I know about Russell Westbrook, he cares about competing and winning and lays it all on the line. So yeah, that is totally, I think, a false, unfair, whatever phrase you want to use, narrative when you're talking about Russell Westbrook. Uh, because the guy is one of your ultimate competitor warrior types that we've seen in this league during this generation.
He's one of the last few, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
that carry that competitive spirit. You know, everyone wants to talk about Mamba mentality and this and that, but there's not many
Right.
guys in the NBA right now that I watch that on a nightly basis,
Mm-hmm.
no matter the opponent, no matter who they're playing, no matter what's going on, whatever happens on the court, whatever mistakes are made, whatever good things happen, bad things happen, how many players are still giving you that 110% effort on a nightly basis? It's a
Right.
short list. And let's just be
Mm-hmm.
honest, it's a short list at this point in
Right.
the NBA.
Yeah.
But what surprised me most about the firing of, because I'm not surprised, respectfully to Calvin Booth, I'm not surprised that
Mm-hmm.
he was fired, right? If they're cleaning house
Okay.
and they want to build from scratch, that's not a huge shock. But what
Mm-hmm.
surprised me most about Mike Malone being fired is he took the job in 2015. He's been there for 10 years. 2015
Mm-hmm.
also when they drafted
Mm-hmm.
Nikola Jokic.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I remember talking to Mike Malone in Jokic's rookie season,
Mm-hmm.
and he was telling me about this kid that they got coming off the bench and how he's going to be really good one day. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really watch Nikola Jokic before he came to the NBA. I saw a bit of him in summer
Mm-hmm.
league, and I thought, okay,
Right.
cool, he's got some skills, but this is summer league. You know, we've seen
Right.
so many
Right.
guys
We've
show
seen
out at summer league who just had more
absolutely.
experience as well. And I remember
Mm-hmm.
thinking, man, this guy's crazy. Like, what's he?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is back where he was coming off the bench, and then spoke to him when they were doing the Nurkic and Jokic front court. And
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of like, hey, listen, it's up to these two guys to prove who's going to be our starting center. And
Right.
then ultimately, Mike Malone has led them to a championship, but he's also led Jokic to 3 and should be 4 MVPs. You know, he's developed the system of play and the schemes that they run. Obviously, a lot of it's helped by having such a great player at your disposal, but he creatively came up with different ways to not only maximize Jokic's talents, but also cover up some of his flaws defensively
Mm-hmm.
with the roster that they have available. Because if you actually look at you know, Jokic, he's never had an all-star teammate. He's never had a teammate who made all defense. He's never had a teammate who made all NBA. He's never had a rookie of the year teammate. He's had no teammate ever lead the league in any statistical category. So the roster that they put around him, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in a league where there are a lot of superstars who demand this and demand that, otherwise they're going to force their way out. Nikola Jokic just showed up to work. And Mike Malone has been his guy the whole way
Mm-hmm.
through, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mike Malone has been the guy for Jokic. So oftentimes when organizations make these decisions and you have a player of this
Mm-hmm.
caliber,
Mm-hmm.
do the organizations run these decisions through these top players? Because players come to the media and they say, oh, I'm so surprised. I had no idea this is coming. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking if you're making 300, $400 million and you're the face of the team and you're an owner of the team, you want to keep this guy happy. Because if he walks in free
Mm-hmm.
agency, you're kind of screwed. So
Mm-hmm.
do you think that ownership goes to Jokic with this and say we're thinking of firing Coach Malone? Or do you think they did this completely independently? Because the reporting was that he was informed of the decision earlier in the day before it was announced, but he had not
Okay.
requested a change in the front office or coaching, though his
Mm-hmm.
evident frustration was with the season played part in you know the ultimate decision that Jokic expressed his frustration numerous times in interviews.
A couple things there. When you just at the end where you said that he was informed ahead of time, that morning before they were going to make the decision, uh, I could see that happening that way. Um, you're talking to someone in me, obviously I never had an opportunity to work with a superstar like you're talking about in Jokic, who is the total face. Obviously the years I worked in Detroit, we had a number of guys who were all stars, great team, great guys, but a different dynamic than what you're talking about here. So, uh, have you heard? Have I heard during my time, 24 years in the NBA, that superstars were consulted during a decision-making process, whether it be a coach or trade? Do I believe that has occurred before and may continue to occur in some places? Yeah, I believe that. But in this situation, I would take them at their word. I don't know Nikola Jokic at all. Just admire him from afar and what he does, and he seems to me to be a guy who's just concerned about playing the game at the highest level, playing it the right way, and winning as much as he can. That's all that he cares about. He doesn't strike me as a guy that really wants to get involved in that. I believe that the Denver Nuggets obviously respect him. They know who he is. That's why they let him know instead ahead of time instead of reading about it on the internet or something like that. I think that's good business in doing that for him, so that he doesn't have to read into it that way. Don't know what those conversations were. When they informed him, none of us know what the back and forth was, and in that situation. But it's a difficult time. Me personally, those kind of decisions for me, this is what, as a president, GM, honestly, that you get hired for, to make these difficult decisions. You don't want, in my opinion, to place that responsibility on your star player to, hey, okay, you sign off on this, or then I'll do it. If you don't, I won't do it. To me, that gets to be a little bit dicey. You're being hired to lead and make the tough decisions as a front office person. Now, in this example, obviously it's a little different because both guys got let go. The coach and the GM. So obviously, the GM didn't, quote unquote, necessarily fire him. This is all coming from ownership, um, and so they have the prerogative to do that. They own the team, and I believe that quote that you said, though. I'll go back to that. That it makes sense to me to hear that they informed him the morning of, so that he doesn't learn about it when the rest of the public learns about it. I do believe you owe him that much respect in terms of what he's done, so he's not surprised. So he at least feels a part of what's going on in a sense. But I don't put the responsibility on Nikola Jokic for saving or not saving the coach's job. I think that
Well,
would be a little unfair towards him.
what would happen if ownership go to Jokic?
Hmm.
What would happen if ownership went to Jokic in the morning and said, "We're gonna fire Mike Malone today, and you're
Hmm.
gonna hear about it later on"?
Hmm.
And Jokic just said, "Nah, this guy took me from being a second round pick to
Hmm.
being an NBA champion and three-time MVP of the league. This guy helped me make $300 million. You can't
Hmm.
fire him, otherwise I'm gonna leave."
Hmm.
What would happen then?
Well, I'm sure that they didn't have to listen to that. And again, don't want to speak for them in the organization, but they would have to obviously take that message very serious. And I wouldn't want to anticipate what the Nuggets would have done or not done. But when you hear that, and I'm sure if he came across with the strong points that you're talking about, they may have to reconsider it at this particular time, would be my guess. Again, we're just guessing here, Mo, and I hate to be in that realm, if you will, but given the scenario that you just laid out, if you went to him in that vein, I'm sure that they would have to listen to what he had to say, and and get and act upon that would be my guess in terms of the best way that you would handle that situation they came, if he, came to the owner or the GM or whoever's making that decision, you've got to be able to, and therein lies the issue there. So if you do that and empower him, if you go to him and say you're thinking about that, then obviously you got to be able to receive his message. He's in the locker room. You're not. The players in the locker room, obviously more than the GM would be, and for sure ownership group, they know what's going on every single minute, every single day. So you'd have to listen to what he had to say, and you know make your decision. That would help inform your decision one way or the other, in terms of how you move forward.
Yeah, I just think, I can't personally see basketball wise firing Mike Malone being a great decision. I think he's a very good coach. I
I
think
think yeah, the record speaks for itself. What he's accomplished there.
he's the best coach they've
He's,
ever
he's
had in Denver.
yeah, he's done a tremendous job. There's no question about
So
that.
so for me, it comes down to what a lot of Nuggets fans talk about is him losing the locker room.
Hmm.
And that more than the actual basketball side of things. But then we have to question at some point, do the Denver Nuggets organization really want to win? Because if you really wanted to win, you would pay just a little bit of luxury tax. You bought the team for 200 million, it's worth 3 billion now. I'm sure you can
Hmm.
afford a little
Hmm.
bit of luxury tax money here and there to keep a championship team together. But no, you've let go of key pieces in your championship runs. You've decimated your depth on your roster. You're adamant about trying to play these young guys who, respectfully to the young guys, aren't ready to compete at the highest level that you want to be competing at if you're making a run at a championship. So it's a tough time for Nuggets fans, and they might drop down to the play-in. And I said
Yeah,
earlier this week, I said that I'm looking at them as a first round exit. And now this news now that further deepens my belief they're going to be sent home in the first round.
you never know, Mo, because players and people can be so resilient in times of adversity. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens with this group in this locker room. Again, this is the unfortunate dark side of our business, this of professional sports, and in particular right now in the NBA. And so I believe Mike Malone probably will land on his feet
Oh,
in another
absolutely.
position, and
Absolutely.
he's been there a long time. And you think about a coach being there for 10 years. I mean, how many other coaches have been at their current positions longer than that?
Like
You talking
Spo, Pop,
Spoelstra?
Kerr.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. You're talking just a small handful, not even quite a handful of guys. It's the nature of that position, and that's a long time, especially in today's world, to maintain and keep that locker room tight and rowing in the same direction, and hearing your message, and things of that nature. So I mean, I look at it, when you take a step back from it, as surprising it is, you know, kudos to Mike Malone to be able to do that for a decade, do it at a high level, and also bring a championship to that organization in that city. So um, wish the Nuggets the best moving forward, and it's going to be fascinating to watch
Mm.
what we've been talking about here today. What is the response going to look like on the basketball floor? Because that's going to be the most important thing there. What happens? Does this team move on in advance, or do they continue to crater and, to your point, become one series and out? So we'll be see. I mean, it'll be interesting to see who they get matched up for, and I know we'll cover that on the Hoop
Yeah,
Genius
they've
once
got
the.
the Kings, the Grizzlies, and the Rockets to close out the season. What's your
Mhm.
prediction for that record over those next three games?
Where's the first game at with the Kings?
The next game that they have tomorrow is in Sacramento.
That's in Sacramento. And Sacramento's played well the last couple games. And then who else do they have? How many games they have left?
They've got three games left: Kings, Grizzlies, Rockets.
Wow, all good teams. Rockets could be resting a little bit because they've secured number two. Memphis is fighting for positioning. I don't know which games to pick, but I'm gonna say they'll go 2-1.
2-1. Well,
Hmm.
hopefully for the Nuggets fans' sake, they do. But what was fascinating to see yesterday, aside from all the drama in Denver, was a couple matchups we had because the Celtics and the Knicks had a thriller in overtime at Madison Square Garden. Former Knick Kristaps Porzingis came back to haunt them with 8 threes on his
Hmm.
way to 34 points. Jason Tatum had 32, including a huge step back three to send the game to
Yes,
overtime. And the
big time
Celtics
shot.
did this without Al Horford and with Jaylen Brown only playing 20 minutes because his knee injury clearly isn't
Hmm.
right. He doesn't have that same
Right,
natural movement.
right.
For the Knicks, we talked about OG and how it's going to work with Brunson coming back from injury. OG had just 13 points, which ends his streak of scoring 20 or more.
Hmm.
But this OG typically struggles against the Celtics. They have a lot of guys
Hmm.
that can match up with him. Karl-Anthony
Hmm.
Towns led the way for New York with 34 points. Jalen Brunson gave him 27. What did you make? What was your takeaways from these games and what could be a potential second round series in the Eastern Conference?
Going into it, and then you can tell how it played out. This was a very important game for the Knicks, in particular. They've struggled against the upper echelon teams in the league this year, had not beaten the Celtics. And just from a confidence and psyche standpoint, heading into the playoffs, thought it was important for them to figure out a way to get a win against this team because more than likely they're going to face them if they advance to the second round. So they were right there to get it done. But and then the way they ended up losing it, like you said, Jason Tatum hits a step back three. Porzingis played fantastic. I know he had to feel great coming back into the Garden and playing as well as he did against his former team. And then to lose that game, that's a little bit deflating. Again, they're competitors in that New York locker room, and if they ultimately do face them, uh, they'll roll their sleeves up and go out and give it their best effort. But that seed of doubt didn't leave their mind because they haven't beaten them yet this year. And over the last couple years, it's been a dominance by the Celtics. So that seed of doubt is still in the back of their mind, which is not what you really want, heading into the playoffs. But and it's just showed me a lot about the Celtics too, though, because the game went back and forth. Knicks started out really hot, then the Celtics came back and got control of it. Then the Knicks, to close out the fourth quarter, um, kind of got control back, and you thought they had a chance to maybe win it in regulation. But the Celtics' resiliency and just the growth of their bench, guys like Luke Cornett,
Mm.
Sam Hauser. We talked about Peyton Pritchard. I know we'll talk about him more when we talk about six man of the year. The trust not only that Joe Mazzulla has developed in him, but the teammates, the star players. Those guys are very important, and they play big minutes for this team, and so it allows them to still go in and beat the Knicks with Jaylen Brown only playing 20 minutes with no Al Horford. Um, Again, kudos to them. And it just really, in my mind, is one of the reasons why I still had this team coming out of the East because they're just that resilient, that good, that confident, and they're playing well at the right time.
And they've won 17 of their last 18 on the road. They
Yes.
have now joined the 16 Warriors and the 96 Bulls as the only teams to ever win 33 games on the road in an NBA season. If they win tonight in Orlando on the road, they tie the Warriors for 34 road wins, which is the NBA record. And if they win by four or more, they go up to second in terms of road point differential, joining the 72 Lakers. So they're in some historic company
Mhm.
when it comes to matchups on the road, which is key given that they
Yeah.
most likely won't have home court advantage if they get to the conference finals. We also saw a great game. Well, we saw kind of three quarters of a great game between OKC and the Lakers. And I'm not even going to dive into that because
Mhm.
the referees ruined that game for me. They ejected Luka Doncic for talking to a
Yeah.
fan, but the ref thought he was talking to him. And it's
Hmm.
just so soft. I'm not even going to go down that because it's nice and early here in the morning. I don't want to ruin my day by getting annoyed at the referees once again ejecting a superstar from a game that was back and forth and was teed up to have a really good finish down the stretch of the
Hmm.
fourth quarter. And ultimately, OKC ran away with it. So we're not even going to go down that path, Scott. We're going to keep it positive and keep it moving. And we're going to move on to tomorrow where we will do our end of season awards. and also look back at our predictions. So that's another day in the NBA. More chaos ensues. This league doesn't go more than 24 hours without drama of some sort. You saw Ja Morant, he can't do his gun celebration. He then did a throwing a grenade into the crowd celebration. So we're going to see what happens with that as well, because at this point, he's just trolling the league. So that's another episode. That's another episode, Scotty P. I appreciate you, brother. And we'll be back tomorrow with more. Any closing thoughts?
Let's get buckets.
Hey, there you go. Subscribe to the show, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and like
Get
Scott
buckets.
told you, get buckets.
Exactly. Get buckets. Exactly.